Welcome back to The Nation and welcome to our media panel, advertising executive David Walden and media commentator Irene Gardiner. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Now let's start off with a big ratings success for TV3.
It all starts now.
It is going, it is sold here.
I'm talking about The Block, of course, and this week's final gave TV3 its highest primetime share ever. A major success, I think, David.
Oh, huge. And they got 1.2 million for the house, and they had 1.2 million people watching the show. I mean, it has been a huge phenomenon. And interesting because I think it's the classic case of all of the females love the dynamics between the couples. All the blokes actually love the DIY part of seeing the decks being done and the bathrooms being done. So it kind of had that remarkable dual personality. And you know, we all have to are forced to watch what our wife wants to watch. And this was one that we kind of went along for the ride. And 1.2 million, it's huge, huge success for them. And again, one of those programs which has got the sponsorship absolutely woven into it. I mean, TV3 would have done very well out of that.
And I'm, you know, beginning to think that this is the way of the future, the commercial aspect, the product placement and these big names backing programs like
Well, it's interesting, we were talking here last week about the new season launch for MediaWorks, and we were talking about how there's a couple of the new event reality type shows as, you know, big local part of that schedule. And this is the classic. This is their big one of those, doing so well for them, getting them record ratings. And what that does, because it's hard now to get shows that bring that broad audience all watching at once, it also means people are sitting there seeing your other channel promos at the same time for your other shows on your channel. So it is hugely important strategically in these tough television times. I have to say though, you know, Dave touched on that it's a very female-oriented show. I'm not one of them. I would rather cut my own ears and eyes off than watch
Irene, listen. For years, we've had a target, in advertising land, we look for the prime target, household shoppers with kids. Women are absolutely the target, and this was a program that was designed to appeal to both sexes. But I mean, if you look at the lineups, women are actually where the networks of free-to-air television is heading.
I was going to say, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about, because it's the way primetime lineups are increasingly heading, isn't it? It's the women that you want to target, and I think we've got to rate. See, this is what people live and die with. This is what presenters live and die on. These are the ratings that come through every morning, Irene. Yes, as producers
and
as well.
network people.
And this, talk us through, Dave, what this reveals to, say, an advertiser.
What that tells you is how many people of your particular target are watching that particular show. And we all thrive on ratings. We buy commercials in programs that rate against the particular demographic that we want, the age group and the sort of the style of person. But, you know, blokes don't have a lot of sport on free-to-air television anymore. We are all forced to go to Sky to watch rugby and things like that. So it's no surprise that now, you know, free-to-air television has become the woman's domain, and we kind of just go along for the ride because actually, you know, you control the remote and we have to do what we're told.
Great, isn't it? Absolutely. You're off to the man cave, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm down in the man cave downstairs and Annie's upstairs watching whatever she wants, you know?
Yeah, so this is where, Irene, we're seeing women targeted more because, you know, have women become, I guess, the fodder for the prime time, you know, dramas and the prime time, well, not that we have a great deal of dramas to be, but the prime time reality shows.
Dave is right. Dave, it's right. It's been a long time tradition that, you know, you do target women, household shoppers, because that is the control of the remote. And yes, a show like The Block, which is, you know, very much about houses and how to do them up, but you know, obviously that is your appeal that is there. It's broad though. I mean, this is a really broad show in general. I mean, I find it extraordinary that it's, you know, the other interesting thing I think from a sort of an advertising perspective, this show is heavily sponsored. You know, that's part of why I can't watch it. I just find that level of every product and everything coming at you is just
listen,
nearly
that's what makes the world go round. If there weren't the advertisers, it wouldn't be the show.
No, but I'm making the point that you got to get a balance there. I mean, I can't watch it at that level. Average punters obviously still can, or it wouldn't be doing the numbers that it's doing. But, you know, there may come a point where that balances out, and I think that's something that has to be kept an eye on.
I want to touch on a little bit too, David, as to why, for example, so TV3 used to target the 18 to 49 demographic.
Yep.
Then that moved
Yep.
to 25 to 54. So
well, it's because the power is where the spending dollar is, and what we've got at the moment is an ageing population, and the kind of the target is moving with us. We are 45 to 60 is now where there's lots more money, and I think that's why people are looking at shows that rate against that demographic and wanting to see more of them. And
see, I heard someone on Talkback call up and say, I'm 65, I've never had more money than I've got in my life now as a disposable income. But can you explain to us a little bit about why advertisers don't target that 65-year-old who's got quite a bit of cash?
Well, because, I mean, you don't go out and pitch advertising to 65-year-olds, because every 65-year-old is actually a 45-year-old inside. So we never want to be pitched as old. We always want to be pitched as 20 years younger than we really are. And so you're never going to get advertising that's directed at grey power. You're going to get advertising that's directed at that slightly ageing. I mean, 25 to 49 used to be the core demographic. It's shifted a bit older, but it's still, we're all young at heart.
And what about, I also had a conversation too with someone who told me that, sorry Irene, I'm just stuck on the advertising side here at the moment.
You're on the ad guy.
But the brand association that I think, we talk about, if we buy, say, a Fisher & Paykel when we're young, we generally stay with a Fisher & Paykel brand for life, or Toyota or what have you. So is that an issue too, that it's the youth or the younger people, the earlier age group that you target, because that's where you get your brand associations for life?
You certainly do. I mean, ideally, get them young and keep them is what we always try to do. That's why, for years banks tried to get into school banking, because if you got a kid to open a bank account with ASB, they'd probably stay with ASB for the rest of their life. Yes, you certainly do want to target them early and you want to get them. But I think today we're getting a hell of a lot more information, and people are a hell of a lot more savvy. So I don't think we'd slavishly follow kind of with the first appliance we bought. If it was Fisher & Paykel, we're going to buy it forever. I think these days people are a little more savvy about how they make those purchasing decisions. But, advertising still works. That's why we do it. That's why we love it.
I guess this too is why the 6 o'clock news and that 7 o'clock time slot, so Campbell Live 7 Sharp, is so important, I guess, because that's where you get your early evening audiences, and it's the idea that you hang on to it for later.
That's, when you're working in a network, that's your most important shows, really, because they're setting up your whole prime time evening.
Win the news, win the night. That's the old adage. I mean, if you win the news, you win the night. And that's why the battle for 6 o'clock has always been a huge one between 1 News and 3 News. And it was a hugely important moment when 3 News actually started rating ahead of 1 News in Auckland, which is the biggest and most important market. And I don't know quite where they are at the moment. I think they're about neck and neck, aren't they?
Well, no, they're struggling now because TV3's got it's lost its good lead-in with Home and Away. So and that's another thing, that 5:30 lead-in is very important as well. And that's, that's making things hard for 3 News at the moment.
Interestingly, Campbell Live, they're still building, which is interesting. They're getting a less of an audience.
Quite weak on one.
Yeah. We could talk about this for hours now, but we must also talk about there is other media outside of television.
Yes, magazines.
Yes, magazines. Let's talk about that, because worth noting this weekend, APN seeking Commerce Commission approval to sell some of its magazine titles to the Bauer Group. And up for sale, I think we've got some images here. We've got Women's Weekly, that's up for sale, and also I think The Listener. So, among others, that Bauer already owns some New Zealand titles, including Metro, North and South, and Women's Day.
Well, Bauer bought the old ACP titles a little while ago. It used to be owned by Packer & Co. some years ago, and they've done a pretty good job with them. And now they're taking over these titles from APN, who seem to be moving their focus back to either newspapers or, I think, digital was part of the press release. I'm not quite sure beyond the Herald website what digital assets they've got, but these guys know how to work magazines. I think they're pretty good owners. Paul Dykeseel knows what he's doing as a chief executive. I understand that there are going to be people having to interview for their old jobs, so I think that's going to be a bit unsettling. But I think they've got a pretty good track record, and I think it'll do okay. I think at least someone who's buying it knows what they're doing,
And it's interesting too, because in that stable now you have, for example, Women's Day against Women's Weekly, potentially in the same
Listener
stable.
against North and South and Metro.
Yes.
It is interesting, and going way back to when I was first working as a journalist, that thing of having competing titles owned by the same company would have been an absolute anathema, I guess the reality of, you know, our very fragmented, very tough market, really it's probably this sale or lose those magazines. So from a reader's point of view, at least we're keeping the magazines, we're getting them in the ownership of one good, solid magazine company. I think you also have that thing where journalists have that strong instinct in them to scoop anyway, whether you relate, you know, even if they are down the hall in another part of the building.
It's networking.
And exactly. So I think it'll be okay. I think it will get through the Commerce Commission, because I think in the end they're a proven magazine owner. The magazines that have gone to them already, what we just talked about, North and South, Metro, Women's Day, Next, they're all doing well. They've all got good local editors. As David said, Paul Dykesall, the New Zealand managing director who came through from ACP, has stayed with them. So I think it's actually probably quite a positive
thing. And
these
are not magazines that are in trouble. They're doing really well. And I think at the end of the day, these guys know what they're doing, and they're going to continue to do it and do it well.
All right, Irene Gardiner and David Walden, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.